John. Are there any questions or comments on the remainder of the agenda? Seeing none, are there any motions to approve tonight's agenda? Good motion from Yana. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Nicole. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Tonight's agenda has been adopted. Our first agenda item is our student recognition portion of the meeting, so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Clardy.
Thank you, President Christensen. Good evening, everyone. Again, it's super excited to come before you today and with really just highlight the excellence of the Roanoke Area School District, and we do this by elevating our voices of our children and elevating the voices of our programs here at the Roanoke Area School District. Before I transition to that piece, I just wanted to quickly give acknowledgement to the slide you probably see over my head, and that is in recognition of honoring Black history. While our calendar marks February as Black History Month, I want to be very clear in our leadership stance that we are very intentional in naming that Black history is not a month, nor is it a singular moment. Black history is U.S. history. It's all of our history. It's how we are founded, it's how we are made. And so while our national celebration, February is recognized for Black History Month, I want to continue to reinforce our stance that representation matters. Representation matters in our curriculum, it matters in our staffing, and it matters how we present ourselves to our public. And so I am very excited to acknowledge Black History Month, but remember that it's not this month. It is what we do, it is who we are, it is our history, it is the United States history. Also, just a quick challenge. You don't have to do it now, and it's just a self-challenge. As you look at the screen, hopefully, and I don't believe hope is a strategy, you can identify more than 4 or 5 people on that screen and know their story, and know who they are, and know what they stand for, and know what they mean for our United States history. If not, that's okay for now. But it's incumbent that we continue to learn, embrace, and understand the multitude of voices that have allowed our nation to be the nation that we are today. So with that, I'm going to transition and invite our leadership from our Black Student Union from Roanoke Area High School to join me on stage, and any student rep you want. Joining me on stage will be Mr. Ibrahim Amara. He's a restorative justice coordinator and, of course, defensive backs coach for the Roanoke Area High School football team, as well as associate principal, Mr. Sean Harris. Oh, yeah.
This isn't my name, but good evening, everyone. Definitely appreciate being here. Thank you all for giving us the space and the platform to be acknowledged. Happy Black History Month to everyone. Can't tell you how proud I am of our students. Just a little history. Roanoke Area High School's Black Student Union was actually founded in 2017 by 2 seniors, Demitu Honda and Jared Biddle. They were 2 seniors who knew, who recognized that even though they were at the high school as seniors, they probably wouldn't see the dividends of the investment they were getting ready to undertake, but they understood that it was important. The Black Student Union was revived. It was founded in 2017, but existed about 10 years prior to that. We managed to grow it even larger than when we first started out. I really have Mr. Amar and our wonderful student leaders to thank for that. This is our entire roster of Black Student Union students. And the goal of Black Student Union is to create a communal family space for Black students at Roanoke Area High School and its allies, right? In just 2 years after our existence, we managed to put a permanent stamp on Roanoke Area School District by partnering with Dane Arts, Mural Arts, DAMA, an organization that helped us put together 4 murals that you'll find in our high school atrium, commemorating Black history, right, and celebrating Black history. We know that visibility is hard. Hypervisibility is hard, especially for our students of color. And this is something that they wanted. They raised the money, they helped us write the grant. We had the support of our leadership. And it still stands in our atrium today. We're looking forward to some of the programming we have now, some of the things that we've done, the staff and student game. I had 13, 6, and 6. Check my stats. I did great. Staff won that game. We've taken students on field trips. We've managed to, forge community partnerships, partner with different student organizations, and really grow our leaders. Our original founders are recent graduates of UW-Madison. We make sure we talk about our history, we talk about current events, and we really hope to create a communal family structure for our students that leaves a legacy over time. Okay, and with that, I will transition to Mr. Amar, who can share some of our more recent undertakings.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. As you said, my name is Ibrahim Amar. I'm a restorative justice coordinator at Mount High School. And as of recently, I've done a lot of team building. This year, we're kind of new to the VAHS BSU's membership form that has a bit of a contract in it. And all our students will be able to maintain a 2.5 GPA, attend 95% of the classes, and attend 90% of the BSU meetings as well, to be involved and reap the benefits of being part of the student group. And all of our students thus far have been held to that contract. They're all doing well, pushing each other in the classroom and in the hallways as well, to be equitable leaders in our school building. So kudos to our student leaders for that. As of right now, we're doing a few things for this month. We got a fundraiser happening right now. We're selling carnations for Valentine's Day, and it's doing pretty well. It's pretty good to get on the school to help provide funds towards our hopeful upcoming HBCU trip. We'll be hopefully traveling to the North Carolina area to visit school at North Carolina Central, North Carolina A&T, Wilberforce Forest University, Tennessee State, among others. So that's one of the goals we have right now. We're working towards trying to get the pieces all put together. There's a lot of planning with very support. We're still working towards that as well. We got a few other things happening. We're going to do a field trip to the movie theater to see the movie King Richard, to empower our Black and brown students to learn more about the upbringing of the Serena and Venus and Serena Williams sisters, and kind of overcoming those obstacles. So a lot of things we have planned that are all really based upon empowering our students, really showing them the power that they have as individuals and as a collective. So it's going to be an exciting month. We got a lot planned. This week we're all counting up our fundraising money, and see how we finish it with that. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our president, Henry Suleiman, who will talk a little bit about how BSU has changed since our freshman year, and the kind of goals that she has forward.
Hi, everyone. My name is Henny Suleiman, and I am the current president of BSU. I have been a member of BSU since my freshman year, and as Mr. Harris mentioned, we have grown significantly this year due to our intact contract of students attending the club, as well as maintaining their academics, as well as encouraging each other. One thing I really enjoyed about BSU is seeing students encourage each other, as well as enjoy the space that we have created for each other. It being safe and being able to voice their opinion without having to feel like they have to filter themselves. So that's something that I really enjoy about BSU, and that's what we're looking forward to doing as well in the upcoming years. And then I'm going to pass it along to Joy.
Hi, my name is Joy. I'm a senior rep of BSU. Transformation, there's a lot of new students, and I really like that because everybody at first wasn't really comfortable about going in. Because really the Black community, we didn't really come together as much before, but I feel like all of us are getting comfortable with each other and getting comfortable about actually bringing it out beside of us to others in our community. My goals definitely have way more people, because there's still a few that are kind of in their shell, but I'm hoping to get them out of it. I'll pass it on to you.
And I quickly state Joy is also the best flower seller I've ever seen. If you walk the
People like
halls
flowers?
of Brown Area High School, and she sees you, you're gonna buy a flower. It's no matter what.
Hi, I'm Taha. I'm not actually on leadership. I'm a new student at Verona, and VSU was actually one of the first clubs I joined. And I really didn't know that many people at Verona, so it was just nice to see my other Black peers coming together and like getting to know them, and then also the Shamars they've been doing our like fundraisers and stuff like that. And
If I could just give some closing remarks, kind of the back of this group. It's been a very different room at BSU at Verona. Previously, myself working at Madison East and running BSU there, it was more of an affinity space for Black and brown students only. But at Verona, we welcome students of all different colors. To hear the feedback that I've gotten from our white or Asian or Latinx students has been amazing. They've been fully supportive. They've been challenged, and they've challenged themselves to also enter a space where they feel like they're the minority and where they feel uncomfortable, but they're learning that our Black and brown students feel that way everywhere else in the school. So to see them take on that challenge, acknowledge that to their peers, and subject themselves to being uncomfortable at times, helps our community grow. None of our Black and brown students have been divisive or been putting them down. They've been welcoming them, saying, "Hey, this is a space where this is a space where we all feel comfortable, but we want you to actually see our experience, learn from us, hear our stories, we can share our experience with you. You can help be an ally for us." So that space has been very, very different for me as an educator, learning, having those difficult conversations with freshmen and sophomores who are like, "Hey, I want to jump in, if I belong." It's like, no, this is a space where every student belongs. To come and build community, understand each other. We're very quick to put up a barrier, but as we all know, we have more in common than we do differences. So that's been a very, very good thing for me to highlight the different type of colors and creeds we have in our group. So our VSU is doing very well, staying at about 80 students and hopefully growing more. So yeah, very, very excited about what's to come from the group in the future.
Thank you very much. Any comments from our board?
I just, I'm thrilled that you've grown to 80 students. I remember when we started back in 2017, and that it's grown and it's become clearly such a strong source of fellowship and friendship and academic excellence. I'm thrilled that this is an opportunity that our students have at our school. Thank you for coming and sharing your experiences with us. And thank you to our advisors for being here to support our students as they travel through the life.
I'll echo what Meredith said. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you to our students for being here and sharing your experiences with us. I am feeling a little bit some kind of way because y'all aren't going to Tuskegee, but it's okay. I'll let you go to North Carolina this time, and I'll put my plug in next time.
So on behalf of the Board of Education, we really want to congratulate you on being recognized by the Verona Area School District and Board of Education for your commitment to all students of African American and African American descent. We applaud the Verona Area High School BSU for providing a safe space to educate and to hear the voices, interests, and concerns of the Black student population while promoting the general welfare of the Black students. We appreciate your time and commitment to our students. Please keep up the great work. We truly value and embrace you. You are our leaders, and we do this for you. Thank you so much.
think that has to stay for the rest of the meeting. And feel free to go and enjoy the rest of the night. But we are thrilled to have the opportunity to see what's going on with our kids. That's ready again. We'll start the student recognition with your report. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Just a quick reminder again, the content on the agenda tonight. So as we go through, wait till we kind of get to a Q&A pause and bunch of questions until then, and we will get through the information in the superintendent report tonight.
Thank you, President Richardson. I just want to tell the audience and whoever is listening or may listen to this future, just take 5 seconds and reflect and remember, this is why we do the work. What you saw to my left, in the voices, the experience, the growth, the advocacy of our future leaders and our current leaders, that's why we do the work. So, there's times and sometimes there's discontent and all other kinds of negatives that come upon systems at sometimes. Whenever those come about, just remember what we're looking at, remember who we're working for, and remember why we embrace the role of educators. We are truly committed to changing lives, but because they deserve it. They deserve people to advocate for them. And so I just want to say thank you for everything that you're doing, and let's continue to do the right work for the right. So as we do at each board meeting, I want to give a quick update and proud to announce that our positive case loads for COVID have declined significantly since our post-break spike in numbers. As you see, we're down to 90, and each of the individual schools are showing declines as well. Again, we want to thank our community and our students and staff for the continued support of our mitigation efforts. Again, we continue to show evidence that schools with strong mitigation efforts are continuing to be the safest place for our students to be, and our data itself is a clear indication of that. So we're so appreciative of our continued adherence to our protocols. We know that it's not fun, but it's the right steps and strategy to adhere to our goal of keeping our students in school 5 days a week. And we are well on that path to maintaining that goal, and just ask you to continue supporting those efforts. Additionally, as we've begun to do, I believe about a month ago, we are also providing an update on employee absences and substitute coverage. You can see the data again trending in the correct direction. We like to thank our staff for our internal coverage and we know what it means for our students to have a familiar face in front of them in classrooms and that peer-to-peer the colleague work is allowing them to that. But we know it's not easy, and we know it's a strain, both emotionally and physically, but it's allowing our students to have quality education educators in front of them as much as possible. Thank you to our HR department for the continued service and support, and helping our staff navigate this stuff. All right, I kind of went through those fast because I wanted to get back to kids. That's where we are up on the screen. As we think about our journey to continuous improvement, another additional step that we've begun is a process called instructional visits. Instructional visits are members of the central office team partnering with building principals and representatives to really dig into their theory of action, begin to go into classrooms and see the practices that we have trained and strategies that they've implemented come to life in front of our students. And also, guys, a great opportunity, as you'll see in the picture with our wonderful scholars representing Sugar Creek. It also is a quick opportunity for us to hear from our students again, learn their wants, needs, and desires. Very, not just but just meaningful dialogue around what school means to them, what their aspirations are, and some very frank conversations about what's missing. And that's what our job is, to close those gaps around what's missing. So as I spoke to the continuous improvement process, I wanted to reframe us today because today will rightfully so is going to be very highly academic services focused as we get into our allocation process and our staffing model that allows for equitable practice in the classrooms. And also we'll get into our results, our results policies, which will give indications of how we're going to assess the student outcomes that you hold me as superintendent accountable for too. But just being mindful, this is all aligned to the very first thing we put in front of our community and board and came on as superintendents, that we will do continuous improvement in our schools. And as you can see, I wanted to put a vision in front of you of the progress to date. Our green is analyzing, this cyclical process of within a shared equity vision that we are continuously analyzing data. Our buildings have created strong theories of actions. We're doing high-level planning or working with getting to implement those strategies, which we are viewing in form of those instructional visits. It's so important that we continue to support staff learning. We don't want to have an expectation without working in partnership with our staff to make sure they have the tools, resources, and time to be able to execute the plan that's in front of them and make sure that they are directly involved in that problem solving dialogue itself. The things that we are still continuing to do, so I did highlight because it doesn't mean they haven't been done, they're just not on the top. And as we're to continue this process of evaluating progress, we know how important it is to reflect it in just, and always we're going to celebrate our successes. We're going to be so excited, I know you're really excited too, that on Wednesday, you're going to get your first kind of notes assessment data. And so everybody likes it. I'm like, where's that? But it's going to come to you in the form of a leadership letter. And it'll be our snapshot of our start data. Spoiler alert, I think we're pretty good along the way. And then we'll have a more formalized introduction, or explanation of our starter data and our accomplishments thus far from the academic services team at the February 21st meeting. So just wanted to put that in front of you, and let you see the cycle of how we're going through continuous improvement and understanding that our shift to provide using data to talk about student outcomes, talk about strategies, and see how they're aligned specifically to our equity strategies. They are all starting to come along, and that's hopefully exciting for you as a board, and they're definitely exciting for our organization as we begin to talk about what we think we're, again, student outcomes. With that, I'm going to ask Dr. Hawkins to come join us as we do an update from academic services, and we'll begin to talk about our allocation process. And so the space where our magic happens is in the classroom. We want to make sure that we have good allocation to support those things. So get a report and update and opportunity that process to back up. Before I go there, is there any questions?
I did have one, but one just maybe for the sake of new families or with the change in just leadership, how can families expect to see results for their own individual child star data?
So that's from the school level. What we will be presenting is our district-wide trends. So starting as the principal at this point.
Just like to say, it's nice to see Dr. Hawkins. Usually, sorry that we usually see you in December. But it's nice to have a change of face up here. So welcome, Dr. Hawkins. We appreciate you. And sure, thank you.
You want to switch computers? No?
One thing while you're doing that, I did want to just to your earlier presentation about absences of teachers. I just wanted to give a shout out and thank you to all of the substitute teachers on the board's behalf. I know it's been extremely challenging, and I took a couple school tours, and there were so many subs filling in for some amazing teachers. And so we just wanted to say thank you so much for the substitutes. We really appreciate you, and we know to teachers who are also working parents. So if your kids have COVID, which I experienced the past couple of weeks, being out is such a stress. So thank you all for doing such a great job being flexible and still keeping our kids in school. I think it's nothing short of amazing. So,
Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate you doing that. It's definitely something that is up across the board. We should be able to do that.
Well, good evening. Let me just take a few minutes to share in this space the beliefs of the academic services team. We believe that every student must be successful. We also believe that each student should have their path to success that is personalized and allows for each of them to meet or exceed their academic potential. We believe that schools will engage in cycles of continuous improvement, grounded in equity, that will lead to improved outcomes for all students. So on the screen behind you see our 5 pillars. And so tonight, I'm going to highlight our work around pillar 5. So the outcome for tonight is for the board to have a better understanding of the staffing process and how the responsible and intentional planning will allow for improved student outcomes. So when we think about pillar 5 and the work that the academic services team has done, along with student services and business operations, we met with principals along the way. So our directors have spent time in buildings, supporting the work, helping them to develop their theory of action, helping them have a better understanding of their school needs, helping them to understand data and to develop a data culture. And so when we think about a theory of action is a way that schools identify academic growth goals with clear strategies to achieve those identified goals. And so in the past, we've had plans, but oftentimes we may not have had clearly identified strategies. And so the evolvement or the evolution that we're seeing now is identifying the strategies and monitoring and providing feedback to our staff and to our teachers on those strategies and then making adjustments as needed. So additionally, as Catherine mentioned, the academic services team has worked closely to align our resources in accordance with policy OE4 personnel administration and to communicate the process for staffing and hiring for the upcoming school year.
You gotta get with the slide, please.
So when we think about staffing, and so when we talk about staffing, that means each principal begins to look at the needs for next year. So each school was given a staffing plan, and that staffing plan was developed by HR. The staffing plan includes student enrollment projections that are based on the considerations reflected on the screen. So we take into account long-range enrollment projections. We look at our growth in our neighborhoods. We look at projected growth. We begin to look and use our data systems like PowerSchool to look at who's in our school this year, who do we anticipate being in our buildings next year. Then we also have the consideration of tuition waivers, our students that we support by McKinney-Vento. Those students are here, and then even those students that may move. And then we have some unknown variables. So we have new enrollments. We also have our charter and tweet lottery and our programs there. And then kindergarten. Our kindergarten projections are sometimes a wild card because outside of our pre-K, we know those students, but there are oftentimes students that are hiding in the wings somewhere and parents don't enroll them until the last minute. So again, we take into account all of our students as we make these projections. So again, as we think about our staffing projections, what happens next? So our principals take all of these things into account. And what then happens at certain buildings, 3 of our buildings, for example, that support the 2A immersion program, They will begin to identify those students that are going to complete and then are monolingual classes. So how many sections will we need? And that work is supported by Dr. Romero Johnson, along with our EL coordinators. At our other sites, principals will determine the number of sections needed for each program or grade level. Principals at all schools will work with their director to determine next grade configurations and the number of class sections needed. Each school's staffing plan will be reviewed by HR, and staffing decisions are then made that may impact teacher placement. So the term staffing neutral, we want to think about all of our teachers being VASD employees. All of them are employed. But there may be a time or an instance where, in order to support the needs of a building, there may be some shifts. The final step will include notifying families of their charter or their open enrollment placement, and then kindergarten and other grade levels will be adjusted based on those student needs. That was a lot, but all of this goes into the work of staffing our schools. And all of this goes into making sure that we keep students first. And so there's lots of planning, lots of work that goes into this. So our staffing plan that's on the screen in front of you or behind you includes the plan that's being presented this evening, followed by the release of each school's staffing plan to the building principal. Principals may then share the staffing plan with their admin teams or their leadership teams for input and consideration. The final staffing plan is then submitted to their director for review, with each school meeting with HR to finalize this plan. Based on this work and identification of district staffing needs, we will engage in conversations which lead to a mass posting of all of our available teaching positions here at VASD on or around March the 1st. So a lot of work goes into determining where our vacancies, either retirement, attrition, how can we make internal shifts, and then we will then post all of our openings as of March 1st. It's important to know that we want to have this mass posting so that we can get ahead of the game. Other districts may have openings, but we want to acquire the best talent. So the work that's done on the back end is done so that we can meet this goal of March the 1st, so that we can attain and attract and recruit the best staff.
Let you catch your breath for a second. Board, also, as you look at the calendar, the staffing plan calendar, a desire that OE4 is resonating very high in your mind right now, because you think of all of our personnel policies and see how these worlds are starting to come together and come to fruition. The board's clear directive is high quality staff that's representative of our student population. This is the type of a timeline calendar that allows us to understand our openings, understand our needs across our district, and then our vacancies go and get the best highly qualified staff for our students, and that are also representative of our student population.
So as we think about our staffing plan, we also must think about how this impacts the classroom. And so our collaboratively developed handbook allows for up to 25 students in a classroom. Our goal is to have lower class sizes. And we'll do this by strategically placing our human resources. As staffing decisions are being considered, again, our number one consideration is students. And how can we provide the best learning experience possible? Ideally, we would like for all of our elementary class sizes to remain as low as possible, with smaller class sizes at the primary levels, kindergarten first and second. In our secondary buildings, class sizes shouldn't exceed 30 students, with 15 students being the smallest, allowing for optimal student engagement and meaningful dialogue. And so, again, our goal is to consider the classroom, consider our students, and ensure that we do our best to keep our class sizes as low as possible. We also want to think about using our additive pay. So, in the past, staff have worked to write curriculum and to develop curriculum. And so we know that a district's budget reflects what the community values. So we asked our we asked our principals to reflect on their students and their overall school needs, and to determine which additive pay duties have the greatest impact on student outcomes. And from that, we're going to make decisions around areas to double down and repurpose those resources, so that we make sure that what is happening, those additive pay responsibilities, you're yielding to the best student outcomes. When we think about our instructional minutes, so that's what happens during the course of the day, you'll see that we've got high school, middle, and elementary, and they vary, knowing that each group has 2,400 contracted minutes. However, what happens during the day varies from one grade level to the next. But what we want to do is highlight the work of, we want to highlight the work of our PLCs. So our teachers spoke to the need for planning and collaboration time, PLC. And so from that, and in these minutes, we're able to carve out time to allow them to have purposeful conversation, meaningful dialogue around data, PLC. So we listen to the voices of our teachers to give them what it is they desire. And again, Wednesday, you all will see the benefit and how that meaningful, purposeful collaboration has yielded us amazing results. I mean, I wish I could just look at that today, but I can't. But on Wednesday, you all will see the results of this work. And I will tell you, it is a different way of learning and a different way of working, because when I started as a teacher, we did what we wanted to do. We would talk in the hallways, but what we have learned and research shows and supports that purposeful collaboration is what will yield us our best results. Purposeful collaboration around data. And so we're going to share that with you all soon. That being said, what questions do you have for me around the information that I just presented?
I would go. Thank you so much for the presentation. I have just a couple of questions. First, can you just give examples of what school business is?
Planning for field trips, it could include a lot of things, but it's the paperwork.
I like asking that. Gotcha. And my other bigger question was, when we look at the class sizes, I was just wondering, clearly with kindergarten, as you stated, it's kind of this like unknown. Do you do similar planning for children that need special education services, and how do you anticipate those? Do you have, assignment of a teacher to a caseload? How is that factored into this, or is that a separate process?
I lost some of what you were saying in your mask.
Oh,
So can you
that's
repeat it
very
again?
possible. I'm so sorry. So can you talk about how special education is factored into this and the ratios and the planning, especially in kindergarten, where you don't actually know if students are going to come in and need additional services?
Well, I'll speak to some, and Dr. Murphy is in the audience, we can allow him to speak to it as well. But some of our students that come in from preschool may already be identified, be it a doctor, Head Start, things like that. So we do have some idea of those. And then others may be supported by the MTSS process, and so we may have some idea. So with some of our students, we do have some idea, but then others we don't, and we have to get them in the school or get them in the classroom and begin the process of observation, supporting them, providing an intervention, seeing how this is on the recommendation, and then making decisions based on that. As it relates to IEPs and our teachers that support those students, I know that Dr. Durgee.
Can you speak to a little how that process works?
Actually, your response was correct.
Okay, perfect, okay, sorry. I didn't want to not answer your question.
No, that was fine. Thank you.
Perfect.
I kind of wanted just to understand if that affects the class size at all, or there's just some supplemental staffing or something.
It's about that, and it really is really looking at trend data as far as, count for and knowing that traditionally there may be this percentage coming through, then there's always opportunity to make adjustments along the way if there's statistical anomaly, increase in students, but really we take a lot of trend data into account.
That seems very good.
I have a question. Can you speak a little bit to where it says curriculum hours? Can you just clarify for our general public audience what that means and what it means by management at district level? And then you know there's going to be a decrease in comparison.
So in years past, for example, in elementary, when we did not purchase or hadn't purchased a curriculum, for example, math, teachers would spend time, so BMAT was written by several of our teachers. But in the classroom, there was still work that teachers had to do to create supplemental resources, assessments, because the assessments weren't always provided. So when you're writing your own curriculum or the absence of a packaged curriculum from a manufacturer, then there's work that teachers do to write assessments, to come up with additional activities to support students that are on the higher end or students that need enrichment and or supplemental support.
So you know there's going to be a decrease. So would you explain, is that because of curriculum purchases or how would you explain that?
Well, what I can say to you is that as we think about how our hours have been used, there are times when, for example, purposeful planning. Without the use of data, you may spend lots of time looking at lots of different measures. Now that we're honing in on our STAR data, here's the data, here's what you need to use. So our conversations are more aligned, they're more focused, whereas there could have been time, I don't want to say wasted, but there was time looking at multiple things or multiple pieces of information. And so now we're aligning our data points. And so it could then allow us to not have to spend so much time on this and more time on this.
I think that's really, sorry to jump in. I think that's a really cool point that I want to give credit to, that with focus comes the consolidation and saving of teacher time that could be repurposed elsewhere. I think that's wonderful and something that is not, shouldn't be understated. So thank you for
At this point, we'll all be anticipating the Wednesday.
I was going to ask you how this is a new way of doing business, of thinking through data for our staff. I imagine seeing the results as encouraged to have this new way of thinking. Maybe how's that been received?
So in our buildings, many of our principals are sharing it at their staff meetings, they're putting it in their newsletters. And so you're right, it is exciting for our teachers to see the fruit of their labor and seeing it really come to life. It was a new way of working. Gathering teachers to begin to purposely talk about data. First of all, for many teachers, having a conversation around data can be daunting because it's not something that we typically do. So to introduce and to have them raise to a level of awareness and then comfortability, and then to see the work yield itself in student outcomes, yes, it's exciting work.
Yeah, so I'll go backwards then, since we're all sort of hovering around slide 18. My first question is the very last bullet point. Is there supposed to be something else there? It says evaluate need versus, is there a comparison piece that is missing? Just trying to get a full understanding of that particular piece.
So,
Slide 18, at least is what it is on mine. Let's see if that's the same form. It's the one about additive pay, where we've been talking about curriculum hours.
Oh, evaluate the need versus,
Because I know extended days, right, is when you're talking about individual teacher contracts that go beyond 190 days. Is that what that's referring to, that section of folks who have contracts that are longer for designated purposes?
I am drawing a blank.
That's okay, I don't mean to pick on the spot about it, it was just a curiosity piece about, right, getting the full picture of what the analysis is going to be for those individual contracts.
Rather than this speak, I'm sure in the many reiterations of this, I'm probably going to have some of it.
Well, and then, so then my broader comment, I think, to this whole piece is again, just staff conversation. I'm thinking to yours, confession, when I was a recipient of curriculum hours and really ensuring that staff feel like they're getting the work that we would have been doing, that they would be doing in the summer, is really getting done during the school year. That it isn't now somehow a loss of that time and energy. So just the question, I guess, in general, about how staff are also, you know, involved in the discussion, not just leadership.
Which is why principals are going to have these conversations and look at, you know, which ones are yielding us the best outcome for our students. So I don't want it to be said or understood that we're eliminating curriculum hours. That's not the case, because there's beneficial, meaningful work that happens when teachers get together in the summer and be planned. However,
I hear the piece that you shared prior, for sure.
However, we can also do it around data, and we
Yeah.
can reduce teacher time and give them back some of their time to do other things. So, I mean, I think when we know better, we begin to do that. And I think as we begin to align our systems, for example, you know, having a data system, being able to access data, I mean, in times past, before EduClimber or before teachers or before principals really knew how to use EduClimber. So we spent a great deal of time educating our principals on how to access data. We're putting data in one place. So principals and teachers don't have to scour multiple places to find data. It's now at their fingertips. That is a time saving. So, I mean, I don't want it, again, to be said that we're saying no curriculum hours. We're just working in a different way.
I think working in a different way is a great part to highlight. I think as we're starting with the board discussions and trying to work that language that we have been using in the past, that the classroom level is really growing, just, you know, the focus on data. I think it's great that we're all going in the same direction for the students. Again, I can't wait to see them.
Can I ask a clarification about slide 16 as well? Staffing plan pieces. So with the goal of being able to do a mass posting on March 1st, would it be fair to say then that any teachers who might be needing a shift based on the FTE and equity needs that are getting designated by the staffing worksheet, will those staff know? Does that question make sense? I said a lot of words. Okay. So any potential shifts or movements, those staff are going to be aware of that also by that mass posting date, ideally?
As much as possible. So we're having those conversations with principals, so HR is working with the principals to identify where there's a growth, where are neighborhoods, where the projections are showing that, hey, the school has grown by this amount of students, and hey, there's been a shift and the school has decreased. So yes, we're having those conversations, and that's why, you know, you heard me say conversation with the director, conversation with HR. We want to make sure that, as my daughter would say, everything is everything before we start having these conversations with teachers. So it's that conversation and dialogue that's going to lead to then making the decision and having conversations with teachers about a possible shift.
And then it is fair to say though, just for the community's sake and our own, that the mass posting goal of March 1st is clearly not going to be the only round of job postings because staff have additional time to renegotiate their own contracts and, I mean, so just that, I love the goal of that though, to try to get the best pool of service teachers coming out of UW-Madison who are really awesome. Sorry, plug for my own job. But that obviously will be continued postings.
So that is our early posting, knowing that there are students that graduated in December. So we want to be those positions that we know are going to be vacant. We can go on and tap into the best, brightest, qualified candidates. What we know, just because it's education, There's gonna be some late retirement, some late resignation, husbands, folks, people will move. And so yes, we will continue to post jobs as they come, as the need is.
Just want to clarify this, but I think something you placed in that sentence, so you said opportunity for staff to renegotiate.
They're signing their intent to return.
Return.
Yes, thank you. Not negotiating the individual contracts. You're right, that's really not something we should do. Yeah, returning their paperwork saying
Any other questions from the board? I just want to thank you for clarifying the curriculum hours, because I'm just thinking from a perspective of a tweed parent, for example, we're used to having new classes that are just coming up and just being developed for maybe like the next tweed grade level. And so it's good to clarify that there are purposeful uses of curriculum hours, and when something like that's coming about, and the whole tweed class is moving to high school, or, a new class is popping up in middle school level, but there's still some substantive times when teachers will need to really do curriculum development that has not been done in the past.
Absolutely.
So this might be a good opportunity for you to just reiterate, and we've seen examples of this all the week today. But at the building level, we talked about especially the PLC, these opportunities to collaborate where our staff and explicitly actually will spend that time and space. I actually kind of feel funny just naming that as data, because those are kids. Those are student conversations about individual students, what we all see here at the board level, data and schools, where we, obviously, practically we're not going to name individual students. At the building level, we're having discussions about the students and their individual outcomes, what they're learning, their growth, any needs, and we're able to do that collaboratively with a group of educators together. That is how we strengthen student outcomes. And so it's a tiered process that happens. So it's the curriculum hours are important as far as design and preparation, but it's those PLC where we repurpose a lot of that time and space where we're going to actually get to the student level where the actual magic comes to
We are that step removed from the classroom, and it's great to remember every piece of information that we're talking about at this level. These are also these are all our kids, all our kids.
Any questions for Dr. Clark?
Thank you so much for coming tonight. We appreciate the updates. You're welcome.
Dr. Clark, Drew double duty tonight.
So.
So you drew double duty tonight, so hang around for us.
Okay, are we moving into the results policy? Do you want to continue on with that as we are going into that? I think it's sort of, again, central board, we're looking at all of this from the reasonable standard as we're looking at the interpretations. The interpretations capture the board's intent. When we're looking at the indicator and the performance targets, are we looking at these to make sure they're measurable and observable, and that they would reasonably give us the information that we need to determine if it's progress has been made. So again, moving forward, we're in the reasonable person standard. I'm going to pass it over to.
Actually, one question. I worked with this have my team have a quick breath. Catch your breath.
Absolutely.
Get hydrated and then we check 3 minutes.
We'll be 3 minutes.
All right, excellent.
We'll be back in 3. Cool. Okay, do we have everybody back and ready to start? Okay, thanks for the brief information. Ms. Brady, are you ready to take us through the results policy 2.1.2?
Absolutely, thank you, President Christensen. So I'll officially close the superintendent's report and move into more action under results policy. Today, we're excited to, in alignment with the message you've heard consistently throughout the day, results policy 2.1.2. As you read it, you will see it's eerily similar because it is the same as our last results policy, but as you know, we go in order by content area. So the first time was language arts, and now we're going into the math section. Obviously, office, so it is exactly the same language. For the purposes of our audience, let's read it out loud. Each student will be literate and numerate, able to achieve their personalized goals. Accordingly, each student will achieve at an individually and appropriately challenging levels that require academic competencies in the following disciplines. And today, that discipline is math. The Brown Area School District Board of Education values student learning and achievement that meets or exceeds grade level standards, as well as goal setting as a cornerstone of teaching and learning. So as you heard from our students earlier today, as you heard Dr. Hawkins present on behalf of the academic services team on our key allocation strategies that allow these consultant policies to come to life, we're going to focus today exclusively on math. So again, we're going to ask for acceptance today, our interpretation, our indicators, as well as our short-term and long-term targets. They'll be measurable based off of the assessment set by the academic services team. Before we go, I just want to give you some anecdotal evidence of the power of student conversation once again. As you recall, when we were putting these policies together, it was filled up like that moment in July in August. We had very meaningful dialogue and intentional dialogue about the power of having our academic results policies first for well-being policies. And remember, we had R2 and R3, which should go first, and we settled in keeping academic first and then followed by our well-being. I want to tell you that our student voices, and some of you received updates on those in leadership letters, as well as the 3 scholars that we talked to at Sugar Creek, have clearly defined and stated, yes, academics is maybe versus the policy, but we better talk about both of them equally at the same time. And so I want to reiterate the powerful conversation that we were having together as a board, as you presented around how we can't succeed as a district without one another. And so I just want to communicate to our community that just because we talk about results policy first does not mean we don't understand the importance of making sure that our social emotional well-being of our students is equally as important, and they cannot be done separately. They have to be done in concert to develop the whole child. So again, thank you for the foresight and thinking that, and thinking of the importance of how we bring to our community, and also for those students out there that continue to elevate social emotional well-being has to be at the forefront of our mind if any of these academic components. So, I'm excited to quickly go over the interpretations, and we'll have turn over to Dr. Hawkins to begin with their initial interpretation for math. She will then go into our individual indicators, turn over to the board for dialogue from there, and we're here to ask questions. So, given that we've done one results policy in there, basically almost exactly the same with the change from literacy to numeracy. We're not going to go as deep as we did before, we're just open up the questions, but turn forward to Dr. Hawkins for initial dialogue on interpretations of the indicators.
So again, good evening. The goal tonight of the academic services team, we were presented with a policy, and we were to determine how we were going to deliver on the outcome. So we began with the value statement, understanding what the board values as we think about math and numeracy for all of the students we learn, as well as ensuring that we will appropriately explaining and clarifying key terms as it relates to students meeting or exceeding their personal goals. So the indicators. The indicators that we were able to identify for this policy include STAR Math. And so STAR Math is an assessment platform for our youngest learners to students in grade 9. It's aligned to grade level standards. And then we use ACT Aspire, which is a testing suite used for our high school students that is aligned to college and career readiness benchmarks. The STAR assessment was selected because it is the assessment that's readily accessible and it allows teachers to do benchmarking. And so benchmarking allows teachers to look at students fall, winter, and spring. And then when we specifically think about benchmark assessments that are reflected in this policy, we want to make sure that we're able to measure student progress at frequent intervals. Benchmarking also allows teachers to monitor student performance and then further identify specific areas of student growth and student need, and then to adjust their instruction accordingly. I'm going to just interject, I can't wait until we don't have to wear masks. In addition, we called out critical thinking and problem solving in the definition of terms because we realize that these are skills that students should possess to be prepared to respond to complex problems and apply thoughtful decision-making skills. So then we decided to look at the specific indicators for R2 1.2. And so they are organized in the same manner and structure as R2 1.1. Indicators 1A, 1B, 1C, and indicator 2 use STAR as the assessment tool. So the indicators, beginning with indicator 1, look at math performance of all students in grades 2 through 9. This goal, indicator 1, looks at the aggregate performance of all students grades 2 through 9 in VASD. Indicator 1A allows us to disaggregate the student performance and focus on students that find themselves in the urgent intervention and the intervention phase. And then we set a goal to move them. Urgent intervention is any student that scores in the lowest 10th percentile. And intervention is any student that scores in the 10th to 24th percentile on STAR Math. It is important to know that the focus and attention that is being given to the students in the focus group, you realize that these are sometimes our underperforming students, and so specific attention is being given to these students. 1B then calls out our focus groups. Focus groups can differ from school to school. Historically in VASD, focus groups have been our Black and Brown students, our Latinx, and our students with special needs. However, just because that has historically been our focus groups, that doesn't mean that our focus groups cannot be something else other than those three mentioned. This indicator clearly states that we will identify strategies that will cause students to meet or exceed benchmark scores in math this year. 1C highlights the students that fall in the intervention or urgent intervention groups within our focus groups. So 1B is talking about our focus groups as a whole, but then 1C allows us to begin to look at individual student groups. Indicator 2 will use standard growth projection. This is a scale score, and it is growth in comparison to grade level peers. So we will look at same or similar scores for students in a cohort. The goal is that students maintain or increase their growth projection on STAR Math every year. Indicator 3 and 3A focuses on our secondary students, our students in grades 9 to 11. And this indicator uses the ACT Aspire to measure students' math performance. This indicator looks at the aggregate group. So indicator A looks at the aggregate group, while 3A speaks to the students that are identified in the focus groups. So as an academic services team, we worked on this report, and we had lots of choices to make. And so as a board, you might ask, where's kindergarten and first grade represented? So one of the things we know is that our early learners for math in K and 1 are learning to read. So in assessing them in K and 1 on math, it would then be, the data could be misconstrued because the focus is can they read or can they read math? And so for that reason, we made the decision to focus on 2 through 9. Star Math does, again, it does have a first grade assessment, but we wanted our data on math to be accurate, and so not focus on the literacy skills, but more on the numeracy skills. We also wanted to, make sure that our secondary students were proficient readers, thus allowing us to accurately determine the math proficiency. In the future, we could possibly use assessments that are found in bridges or math curriculum. However, that is work to come. So that being said, I will ask you all to consider the information that I've shared and then accept the policy as shared.
Thank you. Board, do you have any questions for the 30 years team from the topics about the experiment questions of the commission?
Just have one real quick. Are the focus groups constituted in such a way that you can make reasonable comparisons between like the data you get for indicator 1 and the data you get for indicator 1B, between what looks like the population at large versus the focus group?
So your question is, can we make comparisons or can we?
Right, so my question is, can you compare the focus group data to the at-large data to see, or is that meaningless given the way the STAR test is administered or the constitution of the focus group?
So we should be able to look at both groups. And again, yes, we should be able to look at both groups.
I just have a quick question. Can you speak to why indicator 2 does not have a sub-column for a focus?
Because this particular standard growth projection, as an academic services team, we just decided to look at the entire group and not dig and drill down in our focus groups because we had already identified them in 2 other indicators.
And also, this is a reminder that the indicator doesn't mean that we don't focus in on it, that we don't dig in and look at the focus group data. We're providing indicators that are how we report evidence back out to you. And so, if you look at indicators 1A through C, you've already identified the focus groups through that cell, and so we thought to name it again, and the next indicator will come to you, just like to repeat the same information.
Well, I guess it's something different in indicator 2 though, because in 1, you're talking about, you do have that overall need benchmark, and then you're talking about those struggling and needing interventions. In indicator 2, you're talking about, hey, are people maintaining or growing? And so that's a different measurement. I don't know that I feel super strongly. I was just wondering if there was kind of like a rhyme or reason why that one you feel like looking at the larger group versus breaking down into the focus group. I don't know that I have a strong today. I just wanted to say that.
I think this is more of a comment for me than a question. I think we kind of pointed that back to Claire when we first started. But I'd be curious and interested to see how our academic metrics compare and change based on our social emotional wellness metrics that we have. I'm just curious, and I know we haven't quite got that far, but as we think about some of the struggles that our students are having, all students are having, socially and emotionally. Of course, it's gonna have an impact on academics as well. So I'm just curious to see, what that's gonna be, and maybe that's a little plug for our social and emotional wellness indicators that I would love to see the correlation between the two, and as they positively increase wellness-wise, are we seeing that increase in metrics as well? Academic metrics.
Absolutely, yeah, it almost be a research paper. to,
I don't mind doing that.
Yeah, think about which one is the correlation between, say, a power question of sense of belonging and emotional, the social emotional component. Is my sense of belonging stronger because I am more successful in school? And which one came first? That's that would be very good to figure out how to do that.
I think it's like what you were saying earlier about how we're looking at all these, these are all parts of the whole, they're all different pieces, and the others later or less important. But it's the interplay too, about the different pieces of that we'll see it as we've gone through the cycle of this, we're seeing each kind of piece kind of independent of how it is connected.
I know our students mentioned the importance of thinking critically, and, it's hard to piece that out in an assessment. Assessments are assessments, so it's just difficult to see, like, how are they growing and changing through the lens of things that are more difficult to measure, but are just as important. Jobs are hiring critical thinkers, not great test takers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other questions from the board, any kind of recommendations that you received? Okay.
I'm seeing no more questions. So at this point, members of the board receive and discuss the superintendent's interpretations and indicators of policy 2.1.2. I'll accept a motion to accept and approve the interpretations and indicators as presented so that we can review the board's discussion on reasonableness. So moved. I have a motion from Yana, do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Jen. Okay, the board can now discuss the interpretations and indicators provided. Again, the reasonableness standard is where our conversation starts from. And I would like to start up at the top, just to go through the superintendent's interpretation of that, just to make sure that we are all in agreement with whether or not this captures the board's intent with writing this policy.
Mayor, really quick, and I meant to mention this before we got over to the board, just say, the indicators say R1, R2.11, and they should say R2.12.
Yes. On the,
Just on the indicators page, like,
the other one is the second page. So-
yeah, right before the table starts. Yeah, not a big deal, but
It is
right before the indicators start.
Consider it correct.
Thanks. Not a big deal, but.
2.2.
Okay, so back to the interpretation. Back to the interpretation, I'm not hearing any comments. Do you have any comments from the board about the interpretation, or do we feel it captures our intent and we can move on to the indicators? Thank you. The board can move on to take a look at the indicators. Okay, so we have indicator, I'm not going to go through each individual indicator unless there are any that are in particular that board members want to discuss. So I'm going to read it.
I'm just curious, is it worth adding standard growth projection for indicator 2 into the definitions? Or are we all comfortable with that?
I actually think that.
So no, I feel concerned with what the indicator is saying. I'm just wondering if that, because that terminology is pretty dense in terms of what that's actually measuring and what that means for learners' growth on the assessment. Is that just worth having a definition?
You can bounce back to the question.
Yeah. And sorry, I should have asked that earlier.
No, it's good, I'm glad you brought it up.
more analysis mode now, so.
When we talk about standard growth projections, is that a star-based, can you elaborate on what that is? And it's indicator two.
It is a term used in STAR, so we could, just for the sake of clarity, I don't want to speak outside, but, so that everyone has a common understanding of it.
Just to take it one step further, I'm trying to think back to earlier years of standardized testing. When you're talking about standard growth projection, it does ever seem to have the same growth projection is based on age, is based on previous performance. Do you know how that is impacted, and is it even relevant when evaluating whether or not the indicators have those students with the information that they're updated on the presenting?
So I don't want to misspeak as I look at this 20-page document from STAR that's talking about STAR growth percentile, STAR growth projection. So I can get back to you with an answer without, belaboring it today and without misspeaking.
Well, I'm personally comfortable estimating a growth projection that is based from this standardized test. And then when we are doing the monitoring, maybe we'll have a better understanding of what that growth projection specifically is for the groups that we're evaluating. So I don't think that.
Yeah, no, I have no concerns with the indicator whatsoever. I just didn't know if that would be helpful as a board, or even to the community to have an understanding of what that really means. And just as a side comment, kind of back to your question, Nicole, I do actually appreciate that indicator two keeps this broad, so there isn't sort of the misunderstanding that by having focus groups, we're somehow not thinking about growth for all. That indicator, I think, really stresses that we expect growth for all learners, and we can do that in conjunction with supporting focus groups. I do like that indicator, just wondering what that is.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
So this one, you specifically.
Yeah.
Name the indicator where you see. So,
Indicator two,
indicator two.
adding
I
a,
would need a specific definition. I think getting a clarifying question answered here is helpful to me, but I don't know that. John?
I think it's fine to understand that standardized growth projection is a particular metric that the company that developed STAR came up with to provide some sort of forward-looking data for each student. Unless we're going to dig into particular methodologies and question whether or not they're philosophically sound, I think that it's fine to understand that that's a particular metric that the assessment itself produces. And then it's up to professionals to interpret it and bring that data, as long as the ways that they're interpreting it. And that in doing that, it will become clear what it is and what its purpose is. So I don't know that I need that, so I don't know.
That's very good. I don't think they're asking for a definition, really more of a clarifying question than we should ask.
The question I was asking is for the indicator, but if you go back and look, if we change it there, you're gonna have an imbalance between the math class and
oh, and I'm not asking for it to be changed at all. I just wasn't sure if it was worth explaining what a standard growth projection is for our understanding of what the data will look like coming to the table. Yeah, sounds good.
I have a similar comment, but I probably should have brought it up before. I'm in Jen's territory. I know that you pointed out what happens with urgent intervention and intervention, what the percentages of formative. But I don't see it noted as rigor, so I don't know if there's a way of putting it correct or something like that. I don't remember. You said urgent intervention is the 10%.
Yes.
That was,
Intervention is the 10th through the 24th percentile.
okay. So anyway, that could be, I heard you say that, but I didn't actually see it noted anywhere, but that could be just reminded of that. I don't know if there's a way of putting it somewhere else or terms or something, but just something to remember that, those numbers. And do those change, those were set by us, not by STAR, correct? Those are the ends of what urgent, or is that STAR?
STAR.
Okay. Christina,
And I'm just wondering if your point goes back to the same thing as Jim's, with do we need it spelled out, or is it just a matter of what John mentioned, when it comes back, yes, just knowing what we're doing?
I would agree with you, Nara, that like maybe when the results are delivered,
Yes,
just giving them an overview of the goals are.
yes,
I think even as the starter, for some reason I thought we were determining those numbers. So you're saying start with the template.
So that's helpful.
Yes.
Let's be reminded of what goes on.
I think that's good. I think that's what you said, is just be able to monitor and reminder.
I do have a quick question, and it's more just a question to the general group. So I think that the statement around first graders is totally fair. Like, are you actually measuring them on can they read the math problem or can they do the math? And maybe, I don't know, for a lot of but the educators in the room chime in, but are there any other ways to measure a first grader's comprehension of math? Or Dr. Hawkins, did you say that's something in the future that we can look at? Just not right now, it's not as actionable and easy to do.
Exactly, so with our math series, bridges, there are assessments, however, that math curriculum was just introduced for our teachers last year, and it's a homogeneous. So the PD around, the tools, the resources, and, administering those assessments with fidelity. So that is something that, to consider in the future. How can we use those authentic assessments that are tied to our math curriculum? And so we would be able to assess our kindergarten and grade students. It may be more an oral one-on-one test for the teacher does that and records it. But again, that training, we haven't yet participated in that. It's something on the agenda for
And I appreciate you not putting it in the indicators, and it's yet another thing we have to hurry up and train teachers to do to measure, so thank you for restating that.
But I think it goes back to, again, what John mentioned, with if we're not using it to do something actionable, which you mentioned it's not that great to make action on as a measurement, us having it is just information. I mean, because I think in our reading one, it was spelled out what we were looking at for that kindergarten and first grade piece, because that's the big focus is reading, whereas you mentioned, like, we're more so focused on the literacy in kindergarten versus the numeracy piece. Not that we're not doing it, but the bigger focus is the reading.
Okay, any questions for you? Indicators. We are getting to the point where we feel like indicators are reasonable.
I just wanted to comment that I feel like it seems very clear. I also feel like these indicators are a good first step to get us on track. I'd be interested as we look this out and think about this more deeply in the years to come. We start to get the opportunity to ask more creative questions about how we can better serve our students. But this seems like a reasonable first step.
I just want to, I think that's a great point to make. As we're learning, as capacity is being built, as we're starting this out, I think this will be really fantastic information to have for the first time we're doing this. I don't have a and things will evolve, as we go.
It sounds like John wants to be on the research team. Want to write that paper with him?
I'm much more better at that.
Okay.
Can I just add one general comment for the sake of, I think, continuing to inform ourselves and the community about how this process is working? So this was going to be the test for me as to what my lane as a board member is, because I may have just a tad of background in teaching mathematics. So I found this results policy to be exactly what I needed to remind myself what my frame is in looking at these policies and these indicators. And yes, everything is quite reasonable. My lane is not to wonder about some of the things that I really want to wonder about, because that's where I'm super passionate. This is exactly what this needs to look like. So I appreciated having to go through that dialogue with myself because of my background and where this lands me as a board member. So I would articulate that kind of for myself and my actualization about this, and just for the process we've been trying to do with that.
Thank
It's like, everything out there, it's pretty helpful.
And we also have, I think, the three indicators are reasonable, that
Especially with starting from ground zero, as we talked about too, with the fact that, you know, we are building this entire stream of policies as we're looking for them.
thank you very much. With that, I'm going to wrap it up and ask for a vote. We have a motion and a second approval. If we are ready to vote, all in favor, signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? The interpretation of indicators for our 2.1.1 have been approved by the board. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Clarity and to his team. Dr. Hawkins, thank you very much. And thank you to the board for going through this process.
Just to confirm, 2.1 votes.
Right? Yeah, that's it.
You said 1, it's really, I just want to make sure.
Procedurally, that was Okay, thank you. Yes, 2.1.2. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm going to bounce back up to a little bit higher on our agenda. We have a board action to move our 3/21 meeting to 3/28. So at the March 21st meeting falls through spring break. And so we're going to look to see, do we have the board vote to move that meeting to March 28th? Okay, I just have a motion. All in favor, signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nope, that motion carries. We will be moving our March 21st meeting to 28th. And if I'm making up numbers as I'm going, please. Thanks you to do that. Okay, members of the public who wish to address the board on any topic related to board policy are welcome to do so at this time. Do you have any public comments? I don't think we have any that was anything online, and it does not look like we have any in person tonight. We move on to the superintendent consent agenda. Everyone's had a chance to take a look. Are there any questions?
Here, I just wanted to make a comment. There were 2 staff members who are leaving the district. I just wanted to express my gratitude because both of them were educators that directly impacted my students. So I just want to say to both Carlos Orozco and Rebecca Ryan that you've made a tremendous impact on my students at both Rancho Ridge High School, and I thank you for the time that you spent in VASD.
Extend their gratitude, uniforms and hires on board. Okay, so hearing no other comments, the superintendent consent agenda has been approved. Next agenda item is the board consent agenda item. We have our meeting minutes from our last meeting. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, the board consent agenda has also been approved. Looking at our future agenda items, let's note again that the March 21st date will be updated to reflect our earlier vote, so we will have a meeting on the 28th instead. Just a reminder, we have our retreat on Saturday. We have a meeting again on the 21st, March 7th, March 28th, and then April 4th. So those are our upcoming meeting dates. And at this point, that concludes our board business. We can do a debrief, but everyone who's watching late, we are done with all substantive business of the meeting. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Do you want to take a quick break or should we just move in? Keep going. Okay. Just a quick question tonight. I just want to go through and just as a our results policies for the board, the self-reflection, and did we adhere to reasonable person standard. So I'll start with did you look at your reasonable person standard as we go through your monitoring?
I believe I did. And it was fun to have that break.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate being able to see what we're going to see in the anticipation, and I look forward to it.
I think we did well, and I think we're getting better at this. That's my observation today.
I was probably a little too trendy, but having COVID, I missed a couple of board meetings, and I was really excited to be back. So I'll give myself one pass on it.
I do feel like we're getting more hang for how to approach these sorts of things. I think that part of the frustration that I deal with is wanting to be a year from now, where we've got a baseline already, and we know what we've got, so that we can ask the next set of questions. And so kind of slowing it down to say, we're not there yet, this is just round one, is really useful. But I think it's important to kind of put that out front when we're talking to other people about what we're doing. Because this is a whole culture that needs to kind of start at baseline and then go from there. I really have struggled with finding that balance, but I think we're getting that down. And then we have to balance.
I think it's fair to say, this is a new process, and we're all in that. We're doing a good job of getting that point where, that, like you pointed out, this is again, we're this close. And if we can't rush through to the monitoring part, and seeing this is, each step, and, making sure it's tricks not completions. We're wanting to like move forward, but what we're doing is really like solid groundwork, and it's going to, for our students, and that's exciting. So,
I do want to also give a shout out to Dr. Clary and the administrative team, like, literally building something. But as we are asking them questions that we don't even understand, is quite a trend. So really appreciate all the hard work. Sometimes hard in this work.
Thank you. And we're all supposed to be doing this.
thanks, John, and I would say, you have done a great job on focusing on the regional nursing standard, and really, where we are now, where we were, several iterations ago. But again, the path that is coming to the board is very much, so we are grateful for the administrative team who have put together such great product for us to work with. So thank you to everybody for all of that. With that, I think motion to adjourn. Motion from Nicole, second from John. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.